But one of the other factors I definitely wanted to touch on is that during any kind of thing like this, when back in the time of the Blitz, people in London and England were forced to go down into the railways, subways, and into different kinds of shelters and all of that, right? And they got away from it by singing and just, lighting up a song and just waiting it out and all the rest of it. But the thing is that there's been many times in history when this kind of thing does in fact happen. And what it does is it highlights, right? Like you're talking about, it now highlights all of those existential areas which you've let go. And it sort of brings them to bear now. They're like the elephant in the room, But and also one of these things that it brings to bear is what I've always referred to as the economy of time, right? I think that one of the most important existential things is how the day will now be used, how people are now afloat on the ocean of time, how little relationship they have with time. Because when you are institutionalized, when the superego, which is an equivalent, the psychological equivalent of the left brain, is guiding you with that script, with that manual, with that A to Z manual, then you know where your parking place is, you know what your daily schedule is, and you're abusing time. And you're abusing temporality because it's not yours. You haven't made it your own. It's everybody's. Right? It's what is known in German as das Mann. It's everybody's. It's the everyone's calendar or schedule. Christmas is at Christmas, Mother's Day is at Mother's Day, I've got the birthdays, and we got this ceremony and Father's Day and Mother's Day. And we arrange the clock so that we don't have to actually experience time at all. And when some people ask me, Michael, how do you do all the work you do? And how do you find the time? I don't find it. I made it. I'm not going to get all the details, but I was able to manipulate, I use that word in a positive way, manipulate time so that things I needed to get done that were part of my vocation got done, right? And no sacrifice was too small. Now, I'm not asking people to start doing that, but as I say, just observe in the early instances how time has abandoned you. Because when you abandon it, it abandons you. And then you won't step out of mediocrity. You won't get that book written. You won't get, those things organized. You won't have that thought taking through beautifully from its inception, through its middle, through its contradictions, and then to its conclusion. You won't ever experience that in your life. What you will experience, well, I don't need to paint pictures, everybody knows. And that is the road that's laid out for you by the midwelt, by the collective, by the superego, by the left brain. And so it's quite a journey to be able to step out of that. Most people will not. We already know that. They'll just wait, pause, hold their breath, and wait for everything to come back to normal again, and then just go back to sleep. But there's a few people who will, not do that and will observe this time and take it to heart and say, my God, I'll let the world intrude. I never knew the luxury of giving myself that rest, giving myself that space, giving myself that time. So it would take podcast after podcast to extrapolate on how you work with time, but I'm just introducing the fact that there's a phenomenon called time, and most people know nothing about it because the daily schedule has usurped it or impersonated it. And then all of the different successes and triumphs that you think you've attained in that field of time will never be there on your deathbed. It will not matter because you haven't owned temporality in the existentially authentic way. And so that's a key thing that I did leave out in other comments, but now I'm wonderful that you brought me on, because we definitely need to mention that. So that's another piece in the toolkit for people to work with time, to embrace time, to apologize to time.
Wow.
And to enter into a completely new comportment with it.
Yeah, what I'm hearing you talk about is actually having an earnest, authentic relationship with the phenomena of time, as if it's a sentient being itself. And that right there, I mean, I have never even said that or even thought that thought. And that right there, I can see how wide and how deep dug that idea right there is. So maybe we'll just kind of put that out there into the field and let people kind of chew on that idea, that maybe we need to develop, maybe this is the opportunity of a lifetime that we've all been given to actually reestablish a healthy, authentic relationship with time. It's just like any other relationship. If you're in a partnership with another human being and you don't make that a priority, and you don't take time, and I have challenges with this, and I noticed like, okay, this is spirituality. Like being in a relationship in of itself is like, you want to talk about spirituality, you can go you can be the monk on the mountaintop all you want, but you know, like really you want to see where the self-organizing complex system of life is, add another person to it, right? And then get into that and see where your rough edges and your triggers and your insecurities really are, if you really want growth. Well, I notice same thing with time, this whole idea of time. And again, like, you know, we probably don't have the time, quote unquote, to even do that justice, but just to make that point, because what you just brought up is really, I think it's the point. You know, if there was one thing to really lay down solid in this conversation, I think that, and I want to get into some other things, but I think that right there is the thing.
If we gave 1/5 of the time we give to other people and the care, I'll just use that word, to time, we're not even asking for a whole dollop. Oh my God, how your life would change. And the meditation is really to think of the passing of the seasons. Your meditation to, you know, to hang your hat on with this when it slips away, is to stay focused on how the seasons pass into each other, how nature's own time. This is not something you can learn from men. As I told you, that's where the problem arose. It's from the collective that the problem, why we've, why we have committed the crime against time that we have. And there's a whole apology to time, right? That needs to be undergone.
There's like a reconciliation.
Yes.
Right. So if you
Beautiful
were to
word.
almost like anthropomorphize time, just for the given example, if you were in a relationship and you broke that trust somehow, you can't just like, oh, it's just going to go back to normal. It's like, no, you like, first of all, once you've broken trust, whatever that means, it's never going to go back to the way it was. If it continues together, it's going to be fundamentally different. And there has to be a reconciliation. There has to be an apology. There has to be some kind of honoring of what had just occurred, whatever that break in trust was. Let's just use that example. We can all understand that, right? Or the indifference, maybe, not giving it attention, not giving it the care that you mentioned, right? There is a reestablishing of a relationship that has to happen. And the point I think I'm driving at too is that within the time that we're in, this moment of time, nothing's going to be the same. And I think that is something I just want to get across to people and also get your take on as we're talking about this. We're going through some kind of moment in time where automatically nothing's going to be the same as it was before this proposed pandemic that we're in. We're experiencing something that's never ever happened before, and we're going through some kind of tunnel or transition that you can give us a lot more cosmological perspective on, and just social perspective on. And I don't know what's on the other end of it. I have some ideas, but ultimately what I feel like I know is that nothing's going to be the way it was before. So perhaps this is the opportunity, if there ever was an opportunity, to reestablish our relationship with the present moment, because that's going to inform where we go from here.
Yeah, if you are too focused on the horizon, you lose sight of the steps you're taking at this given time. And by the way, the top existential philosophers who have extrapolated these things on time, the word that they use is reconciliation. So you're bang on. In German, the word for reconciliation is exactly the word that they use, right? Amongst others. So you're bang on there, Ronnie. You know, but quite. And remember, here's the weird thing about it: that those acts toward time are occurring at any time. See, so it's like a weird paradox. There's no time set aside. Time allows you to come in at any time. The door's always open. Hey, you can't, you're just like, oh, you come to church only on the Saturday to light the candle. The other guy comes every day. Look, as long as the candle is lit, it don't really fucking matter, right? Because the man who only comes for 1 hour could be spiritually far more intense with what he's doing than the guy who's going, okay, here we go. And not focused on it. This is entirely qualitative.
Not going through the motions, right? Like actually, like in terms of like if somebody has a prayer, it's different than, we can easily just go through the motions, but I mean, that's a whole thing in of itself, but I don't want to derail this, but like, I think right now, a lot of people are just going through the motions. And then that's also where that resistance that we talked about before, that rub up against transitioning into more of an authentic, present, fully engaged version of us, which is the version of us that actually does what we want to do. But we hold ourselves back from doing what we want to do because we have these programs. And yeah, again, I don't want to throw you off. You just get me going so much that I can't help it.
Well, again, a key point is that you see, this is not some ideology that needs to be imposed by somebody else. You know, the essence of the prayer to time. All you need to do is the personal introspection to see how you yourself have abused time, because it's in our own lives. That's why it's called existential. You need just to look back, and every human being listening to us right now will find moments of their life where they definitely abuse time. I'll say no more about it, but you have to look inside. And when you see that, when that becomes a reality, then the statements of others are just signposts, because now you caught it and you won't do it again. You know, those are moments where something slipped by in your life, right? A statement wasn't made, a timeout wasn't taken. You see, there's umpteen violations that we've made on an existential level. And you see, there's existential shame. You know, we don't want to get into the whole 9 yards of it, but this produces what is known as existential shame, which is very different than guilt. Guilt is towards infractions towards other people. You can go and get the forgiveness or not. Shame is violations against the self, which is a totally different dynamic and which causes a different kind of pathology, which psychologists today couldn't, actually, they've probably never been really interested, except for a very small window of time just after Freud. Basically, it fell. And the champions in America who tried to champion it, they weren't heard. So we're into guilt, and we're into fixes in pharmacology, you know, and it hurts, doc, quickly, you know, fix it. The whole real psychoanalysis and psychology, which deals with this existential shame of the crimes we've committed to ourselves, right? That is null and void today. And I try to make it a key part of what I'm, you know, into. But one of these that stands out is our whole, what's called temporality, our relationship with the time, how we've objectified it, how do we pushed it away, how we violated it constantly, and how we do have a quotient of shame, actually. You know, a very new concept of people who are totally unfamiliar with this, but nevertheless, there's a shame there that at some point has to be negotiated. It's part of what's known as the underworld journey, right? The underworld journey, if you track it in the tarot or in astrology or in any other tradition, a Jungian one, a Campbellian one, you know, any tradition that you look at, the neophyte in his journey of the underworld will be suspended, you know, like the hangman. That's number 12. Well, how many digits are on the clock, right, etc. So the hangman, number 12, is the neophyte. He's the initiate, whether that's in Celtic Ireland or the deepest, darkest Africa, it wouldn't matter. He's going to be in a moment where his time is suspended. You know, sometimes they even physically put you out in the middle of the desert. You don't know where the hell you are in the middle of the night. And you don't know what you're going to run into. You're going to be eaten, or you're going to get stung by a cactus. You know, you just don't know. So you have to find from within you the orientation. So this crisis point right here can be extrapolated, and it's far more interesting for me to do that, to be extrapolated along these archetypal existential lines, not losing sight, right? 10, 20% of what somebody else is saying, what is going on, but never to lose sight of that, as you said, that grounding, that self-reference. And people don't have self-reference. They've got world reference. They've got persona reference. How's my mask doing? How am I looking now? Am I getting those successes? Keep polishing that badge, right? No. These are things that are going to throw you off kilter, and they're part then indelibly of that underworld experience. They're part of the fool's journey, right? As Joseph Campbell called it, the hero with 1,000 faces, right? But it's the fool's journey, and now we're all on it. But it's only at times like this that the masses get to realize, yeah, I'm on the fool's journey. Go figure.